Dear friends, hello and welcome today to Firepoint. Behind me is the assembly line. I'm going to visit it. This is the most used drone on the battlefield. It's incredible that they let me access places like this. I'll show you some behind the scenes, then discuss its use. Here behind me is the morning production. It's extremely hot as they're drying. There you go. That's just for this morning. So here we're at a drying place. Since, as they are producing 160 drones per day right now, drones, missiles, it depends on what you call them, 160 per day. Logically, many places are like this. There are many production lines operating simultaneously in various locations. Even crazier, each production line has something local. The production of carbon parts, the production of metal, the production of the engine, the printing of electronic circuits, all of that will accumulate. That means even if a factory, there was a part of the buildings that was hit, and I assure you, they really do what's necessary so that we can't be identified in terms of location. Well, even that factory will be able to keep working at least 2/3 of the time, since in every factory, each production line is tripled. And so, logically, by multiplying the assembly lines and production lines internally like that, with hundreds of small suppliers like that who don't even know who they work for or what they're ultimately producing, well, you have an efficiency that is gigantic and a secret that is extremely well preserved, and then an efficiency that is unmatched. Since you aren't buying exhaust pipes or parts, no one knows what you're making, leading to record costs. They even make their own machine tools. So in the end, no one even knows this company has developed production capacity. Nobody sells them machine tools. The organization, secrecy, efficiency, and costs are insane and incredible. So when you look at the exterior, pretty much everything is plastic. It's plastic. ABS, the most basic system you can find, the simplest you can find. Regular nuts, everything is absolutely normal. And so this is the nose. You see here, this is how they attach the noses. There's no plastic, no screws, no nuts, just with a kind of elastic. They hook it here to hold it. There's absolutely no complex assembly, no complicated machinery, and the skills required are relatively accessible, even for workers who aren't highly qualified. The nose is now on. You see these simple rubber bands here. That's what's going to hold the nose of the drone, the engine. Everything is held together by that force. Even these small plastic parts rely on it, which may seem simple. And yet, they produce them locally because they didn't have the possibility to find something that really matched their needs. Matches tension, torsion, cold, and humidity. We're in Ukraine, where summers reach 50 degrees C and winters drop to minus 30 degrees C. There's often innovation in industrial processes, for example. Typically, we make a wing with all its components, including internal elements and passages. It usually takes 6 days, but with common industry technology, they've reduced it to 2 hours and 30 minutes. That is to say, for example, these wing parts here, you see that there are all the rivets. It's not two pieces that they ended up putting together. It was that they had the complete wing and they cut it out to have the flap at the back, which will naturally have the right shape. They just added some movable systems here, but it's really simple, just regular nuts and bolts. And they also have a much higher degree of tolerance for deviations. For us, accuracy must be within 0.1 millimeter, but here 1-2 millimeters may be acceptable. So in the end, they check that it doesn't degrade performance and that the system will still be efficient enough. Overall, it means there are fewer rejected parts than you might think. In our industries where we have an unacceptable number of imperfections, whereas here actually it's much more rustic, much more efficient. 2.5 hours instead of 6 days to make wings that will be useful in 99 out of 100 cases. Another important factor in their rise was that they developed their own robots, their own machines and tools. It's 100% produced on site, and when you look at it, it's absolutely the simplest thing. These are some of the least complex machines you can imagine. All of this is obviously controlled by computer, but in reality, you see, these are things that are very, very simple. It saved them tens of millions in R&D and purchases. And behind that, however, they don't reduce the quality of the carbon. They really have a quality that's always top-notch, but with tools that cost absolutely nothing. So, at this point in the visit, we're joined by the technical director of the company Firepoint. I think to further develop his abilities as well. She shows me a few small technological items, but above all, she tells me, I have a surprise for you. So, I'm expecting some goodies, as usual. She tells me, but it takes 2 hours. Can you go? And then we leave this factory. The first one you just saw with the FP-1C. These are already one of the most important strategic elements of the Ukrainian army for me. This lets them strike deep and target Russia's economy. And then we get in the car, security procedure that I can't exactly detail for you, and we arrive in an environment for the Flamingo, and there it's the most strategic weapon. This missile has a 3,000-kilometer range, a 1-ton payload, and was previously used on Crimea. This missile is nearly legendary. There are very few, and we don't know the Ukrainians' exact position. They seem eager to show me or demonstrate their growing power. Of course I can. I couldn't film, had no camera, global positioning system, or my own car. So all I have is this photo where I'm standing in front of a Flamingo. We couldn't show the front because there are secrets, so it's frustrating not being able to share everything I saw with you. The one thing that I find maybe the most incredible is that there are no suppliers. They only receive plastic pellets and completely ordinary pieces of metal to be able to produce everything that's needed without having any suppliers. Other than powder, aluminum, and small things you can buy anywhere, they produce everything from A to Z on site. And that's something that makes them undetectable. They can't be identified. None of their subcontractors know what they're doing in that ordinary warehouse with a few trucks passing by. Warehouses like that are common across Ukraine, and the production rate is. You can clearly see they're ramping up. You can see there's space. You can already see that when I was there were several missiles side by side. You can see there are several they've just finished winding, and some that are drying. You can see they're assembling. You can see they're also producing parts of the engine right there on site. And so after this visit, we were able to have an exclusive interview, of course, with this technical director. And you're going to see it's pretty incredible in her strategic vision and in their operational capabilities. We have the great honor of being welcomed today by the teams at Firepoint. Firepoint is a company that managed in 3 years to do what our companies need decades to achieve. And today we're with the Chief Technology Officer of the company, so we're going to switch to English to talk with her. Hello, happy to be here with you today. It's incredible what you've managed to achieve, and to be clear, you did it in just a few years. Some companies believe things are impossible, sometimes for decades.
So it's possible if someone points a gun at your head?
It wasn't really your choice then. Let's focus on your production. The most famous drone so far is the FP-1, right? Yes. When did you start this project?
The idea to create the FP-1 as a concept was developed at the end of 2022, when our founder Dennis realized that we needed something can deliver roughly 50 kg of payload up to 700 km.
But was he some kind of engineer? Was he already involved in the military? Yes, he was.
None of the team members who started the project had been involved in the defense industry before. Of course, we had a technological background. Dennis is a PhD in physics. He worked on several engineering projects. The rest of the team also had a technical background, but not specifically in aerospace or defense.
And so, when you come into this field with your own mindset, looking at what's already out there, you say, hey, maybe we could do better for less money?
Well, we lacked the confidence to believe we could do better. But we had a very modest goal of offering a system that was both mass-producible and inexpensive. Those were our goals at the very beginning, when we realized that we could achieve both of these objectives without losing efficiency. Sometimes even surpassing traditional methods in efficiency, we realized we needed to scale up the concept.
But do you rely on external systems? Do you buy what's available on the market from China, France, the United States, or do you try to make it yourself?
Ukraine is fighting for its independence in this war, so it's deeply rooted in us to try to be independent. Of course, we can't be completely independent right now in terms of skills and materials, but we're trying to minimize imports and rely on local production as much as possible. We depend a lot on help from our partners for funding, intelligence, experience for developing the whole ecosystem, and general political support at several levels. We're trying to handle as many skills and equipment needs as possible ourselves.
Let's return to the FP. One production began just a few months later. That's the idea.
Yes. For the design and prototyping process, we followed a very classic approach. We didn't invent anything very original, and that applies to all our products. We simply do what already works well in aviation or in traditional defense. We took a very basic aerodynamic design. We chose this one rather than another one, for example. Everyone is wondering why I don't go for the single wing design, like on Shahed, because it's much more difficult to be flexible with a single wing. Also, when you're teaching your plane to fly, it's easier when the platform is generally flexible, whether it's to collect data or to try to organize the perfect flight. So the FP1 has this shape because we designed it thinking that we would modify it several times, with adjustments here and there.
And the first prototype?
The first prototype was created, tested, and then certified in May 2023, which goes from November 2022 to May 2023. So 7 months?
That's amazing. Now, 2 years later, we're discussing mass production. What exactly does mass production mean?
Mass production? That means thousands, several thousand drones per month that are immediately delivered and used in combat missions.
Okay, that means hundreds per day?
Over 100 daily.
We were lucky enough to visit the factories. The factories are absolutely incredible because when you look from the outside, and I'm used to visiting French factories, everything in the machines appears simple, as do the tasks. Was it designed from the beginning to be this simple, or is it just because you weren't able to buy South Korean machines, for example?
It was specifically designed to be as simple as possible. We made initial investments, our own money, to buy the machines we needed, but the prices, the delivery times, the maintenance, the service. If possible, we avoid that. We now have high-quality machines. But the FP1 drone was specifically designed in a way that allows us to very quickly increase production.
But again, for the supply of all this equipment, you are now producing hundreds of drones per day. That means hundreds of engines per day. Do you rely on yourselves here, or can you source from abroad?
At the very beginning.
We used to buy engines and we continue to buy them to meet our needs. But we also realized a year and a half ago that if we didn't produce our own engine, it would always be a bottleneck. To increase production, of the 82 parts in this engine we're designing, 80 are made in-house. So the foundry, machining, milling, fitting, assembly, everything is produced in-house.
To give you an idea, even the exhaust pipes, now they make them locally, since no other place can supply 150, 200 or soon 400 units daily. Producing it locally drops the cost from 400 euros to about 70 euros per piece due to savings and mass production. Let's discuss how effective the system is on the battlefield. Do you know what percentage of launches hit their target?
The organization responsible for compiling these very precise statistics is the General Staff of Ukraine. They have the most accurate information, but we can't share specific figures. I know that Firepoint is at the very top of the range of drones currently being used on the Ukrainian front. We have several peer companies that are close to us in terms of efficiency, but Firepoint is the most efficient drone at the moment.
Because every day we still see successes in the field. So, does that mean that at least a few of your drones manage to hit a target every day?
Yes, but a few is very little. Most hit their target.
You mentioned your battlefield experience. So, do you supply drones to the army for testing, use and feedback? And how long does it take for you to get feedback?
Personally, I don't think the way you're describing is the most efficient, but it's the most proper way to do it. On our side, we accompany each mission on the battlefield with our inspectors. According to the experience of the military personnel, this might require more escorts on our side or just one. But we compare the feedback we receive from the armed forces, we match it with the feedback from our inspectors, and the feedback loop is extremely short. In general, for night missions, if something went wrong or if something needs to be adjusted, we receive feedback as early as the morning. Every morning we review the work from the previous night in our analysis center. And we see how we can improve the system on several levels, like the launch system, how we can make it more efficient.
Okay, but are you talking about the system's efficiency on the battlefield or also about how easy it is for the military to use?
In all these areas, we believe our mission is to ease the armed forces' mental burden as much as possible. So, while they focus on military tasks that civilians can't accomplish, we can try to take those responsibilities off their shoulders by improving logistics, creating more user-friendly interfaces, and increasing efficiency on the front lines. So, efficiency and improvements cover many topics.
Okay, but again, I'm going to think like a Frenchman, sorry about that. In France, the government or military gives a long list of requirements to meet. Is it the same here? Sorry, does it work the same way here?
Sorry.
Does it work a bit more like this now? But at the very beginning, every new platform or every new task we decided to take on came from our feeling that it was something the country needed. Of course we do analyses, of course we do our research, but every platform except for the FP2 was created on our own initiative. FP2 came from the army when they told us they needed an effective mid-range strike drone for the front line. So it wasn't our idea from the very beginning.
So,
What's an intermediate strike called?
by
Intermediate strike? We know it covers up to 300 kilometers.
Okay, it's still the longest range strike we have in the French army, so let's stay modest about this. 300 kilometers, that's a strike.
Yes, and 105 kg of payload.
So this one, it's really a heavy load. Yes, so it was something they were waiting for. You developed it independently with your own funds, without any official request or government funding.
yes.
We use all our time and our own money.
At the beginning,
It was our own savings, then it became a reinvestment, income made from sales. All our profits are now reinvested in research and development.
Incredible. So you're saying that all the projects come from your ideas. Is that also the case for the Flamingo? Yes, so you just said, okay, let's do the Flamingo and we'll see if you agree.
So there was a guy from our team who brought the idea. He said there was a Soviet unmanned aerial system called the Strik Tupolev 141. Do you think we can bring it back to life?
Yes, some were fired at the yes, by the way, some were fired at Russia.
Yes, we already had some components of the launchers, things we could maybe use to speed up the design process. And we took that as a rough idea. We quickly realized that the Strik wasn't exactly the project we wanted to have, but the idea started to simmer and it led to the Flamingo.
And how long does it take to go from the idea to field testing?
In the case of the Flamingo, it took 9 months.
You went from nothing to making these 12-meter tubes with electronics inside in just 9 months?
Yes, the first prototype, we created it in 6 months. Of course it was made of cardboard and sticks, but when we realized there was potential, we developed it so that it would look like what we had simulated with the safety systems. Then, of course, we started to make it more professional.
Do you test it directly with the Russians or are there official testing facilities here?
There are several levels of testing and you have to pass them all.
Okay, but does that mean there are internal tests?
I mean, the final battlefield test happens only after several successful tests in Ukraine.
All right, so it's pretty quick to go from tests and to check if it works. So now we're at the beginning of November. Is it effective?
yes.
Of course, but we have to understand that the Flamingo is a new weapon that has only recently entered into operation. When you get a driver's license, from the day you receive that license until the day you become a confident driver.
And that you
You can drink coffee, eat your sandwich, listen to the radio, and after a while, it's the same with every new system, and even with a big and efficient Flamingo, it's the same.
so
We are becoming more confident drivers, we are adjusting and testing new tactics. We're quickly gaining confidence and will achieve more remarkable operations.
All right, so from what I saw today, because I had the chance to visit these facilities, you're already making a few Flamingos daily. What are your expectations or goals for early 2026?
I think we'll find out when we see it on Russian news channels, but we're going for a mass production approach.
So, is this just marketing, or do you actually reach 3,000 kilometer range?
We are already reaching that range, and it has already been confirmed by tests.
All right, you have an amazing project with cruise missiles, drones, and now you're working on ballistic missiles.
Yes, that's the case.
North Korea has spent 50 years developing ballistic missiles, but still hasn't perfected them. Do you think you can supply ballistic missiles in a few years?
Yes, I think that's completely realistic. Yes, a realistic job to do.
But is it? Are you reusing systems that have already been validated, for example, on the Flamingo, or do you have to start from scratch each time?
No, of course, each time we use something that has already proven its effectiveness several times on the battlefield. We don't start from scratch. We mainly base our systems on commercially available components. If that's not possible, we use a more customized system, but we test everything.
and when
We try to choose which system we want to use. In Flamingo, for example, we install all the equipment after the tests on the polygon. We install all the equipment for the FPware platforms. We use them in real battlefield conditions. This way we can understand how they react to jamming and spoofing. We validated the sub-assemblies before integrating them as the final choice for the Flamingo. And it's the same for the preliminary tests, which are very close to reality, before we make a final decision on what we will install for the system.
You're also working on Flamingo servo controls, which could be reused or adapted for the FP7 and FP9.
No, ballistic missiles use a completely different type of control system. We produce our own control systems for Flamingo and for ballistic missiles as well, but these are two physically and logically different things.
Okay, but you built your own servo mechanisms from scratch and did it in under 2 years again.
Of course, but we have top specialists experienced in producing control systems.
Who came from other Ukrainian companies?
yes.
So they're working for us right now. It's not like we took this equipment from nowhere.
Now,
We can afford it, and we have a very large team, a team of professional specialists who had experience in defense in aerospace.
and of course,
We use their talents to develop these kinds of things from scratch, and we provide them with management, ideas, and resources.
Okay, because I just need to add one more thing. Here, we tend to forget that. But Ukraine had about a third of the entire military industry of the Soviet Union. All those brains are still here and ready to fight. You might also have support from foreign engineers willing to help.
yes.
We have some engineers, but not as many as we'd like. They work in our research and development department, really coming from different countries. They found it was a very interesting job for them, with a high salary, a good team, and many opportunities. One really important thing here, which is very rare for an engineer, is to be able to see their invention during their lifetime. You don't need to wait 20 years to see results from what you created. You can see it in a year or two.
They come from Western countries like France. Are you French engineers? Yes, friends. Do you know where it is? You can apply as well. So, just for the mindset, what are you fighting for? I mean, at the beginning, again, in Europe, companies just want to create proper systems to make money. And what's your motivation? Is survival or stopping the Russian threat your motivation? What do you believe? Your motivation is to survive. Your motivation is to end the Russian threat. What do you believe in?
We were absolutely satisfied with our standard of living before the war, so getting rich was never the ultimate goal. My goal is to live and raise my children on the land that's rightfully mine by birth.
Belongs to me by birth.
Many generations in my family have struggled because of Russia. As neighbors, we've endured the Holodomor wars and various oppressions. And I fight like them back then and for the future as well.
And them too, and for the future as well.
It's my favorite place in the world. I want to live here, I want to work here, I want to create here, I want to see life thrive here. Every Ukrainian also feels deep anger over the loss of so many amazing people in this war. So it's also an honor that we give them.
So it's also an honor.
And you still have friends around you in the combat team. You are on the front line. So I guess that's also motivating, knowing you'll really save these people. So this might be a stupid question, but is it? Did the army give you any feedback saying, so thanks to you, we destroyed half of Russia's factories and refineries. Maybe without you, we would have already lost Pokrovsk. Maybe we would have already lost Pokrovsk because of you.
Yes, sometimes we get this feedback at the official level, sometimes during official meetings where we analyze the situation with the other producers.
We analyze the situation with.
Of course, this isn't information we can disclose freely, but we see a huge impact. The Ukrainian drone industry has recently made major progress, not just with long-range strike drones. I'm referring to all types of drones, including first-person view drones. On the front line, at medium range, for deep strikes against ground systems, different interceptors, intelligence systems, all of this together has had a huge impact. Of course, we first started by targeting Russia's economic targets. We only work on military or economic targets. And we are extremely happy that no civilians have ever been affected, only legitimate targets. Yes, we can sleep without remorse at night. But in general, yes. We get that feedback and we feel shy when we think about it, but it's also a reality and we're happy to be able to help with that.
Can we talk a little bit about the prices of your production for the FP1 and the Flamingo?
We're proud to say all our products are the cheapest in their category. When I talk about category, I mean when comparing payload range and the ability to deal with jamming and spoofing. And in each of these categories, the FP1, FP2 and FP5 are the most affordable. The cost of the FP1 is currently $58,000. For example, the average shide price has increased to $200,000 or $230,000.
Now 00000.
The Russians have had to make a lot of changes to their shides because at first they were very simple things and now they need controlled reception pattern antenna, etc. Very complicated systems. And the Chinese are bleeding them dry because they're relying 100% on the Chinese, who are raising the prices a lot because they're taking advantage of it, obviously. That means shields are now much more expensive than at the war's start, making the FP1 4 times cheaper than a shield.
What you heard at the beginning of the war was actually just rumors, because our investigators had access to the official Russian supply documents. The shide has never cost 20,000 or 70,000 or 90,000. There has never been such a price for the shides.
Yes.
Really, it was a psychological war between us then.
At least from what we know, yes.
And for Flamingo?
And Flamingo currently costs less than €1,000,000.
The deal then, for the price of 2 French scalps, you get a Flamingo.
But we have 1,150 kg of payload.
We have useful kg, yes, and you go 10 times farther with twice the payload, and you produce several of them every day.
But we can't reach such low prices just because we're nice people. But thanks to the huge help from the government and the major deregulation, the bureaucratic deregulation they've put in place,
Their bureaucratic deregulation.
that can help us have a very fast R&D process. When we ask ourselves why our company's R&D cycle is so short, other countries take 5-10 years. Which ones? That's because we don't have bureaucracy. Our government helps us a lot, because it removes bureaucratic constraints for many civilian companies who can try to manufacture drones.
to manufacture drones.
And we can really certify something if it works well. It only takes a few weeks to get the certification and receive a public procurement code. Back then. In another country, it could take 1.5 to several years.
A country.
So, we don't need a big team of lawyers, a big team of accountants, and a big team of people who just do paperwork. We don't need to fund the whole company for 5 years. While we're waiting to finish the bureaucratic processes, we can save tons of money because of this. That's why we can afford to create an affordable system. For Europe to get a similar inexpensive system, it must first consider deregulating bureaucracy. It must, and then all will prosper.
I also noticed that some of the systems and software you use are open source. Is that something common here? That's really your mindset.
In Ukraine, it's now very common, but outside Ukraine, it still raises many concerns. But we chose this approach for several reasons.
Several reasons. First,
we have the first and the most important one is the speed at which the different systems adapt.
The first one,
using the same architecture lets us integrate new systems in weeks instead of months or years. Secondly, the number of users for open source solutions is generally much larger, which means that the debugging process is also much more professional. No company could afford to have 1 million users who are also control engineers.
And the third
reason, which is also very important, is that we become completely independent from third-party interruptions. No one can stop our weapons from working.
All F-35 customers listen to this. Stop buying the F-35. Yes, because basically you're talking about open source collaboration. Ukraine is making itself a champion. To mix all the systems in air defense and even to integrate our missiles onto your planes. Are you working with European companies? Are you able to create this kind of working community together against the Russian threat?
Yes, we currently have a very powerful conglomerate of European companies. And Firepoint acts as a systems integrator. We are working on a system about which I can't disclose many details yet. But it's related to air defense and the creation of a general ecosystem, where we will all work on open source auditable code with a very fast development cycle.
Subtitled by Société Radio-Canada.
Wait, are you saying that you're also developing an air defense system that will be open to other suppliers in Europe?
Yes, of course, we will test it in Ukraine, but our goal is to create an independent European air defense system. Also, critical components that could come from different countries to focus as much as possible on the European continent.
Is this a Firepoint program or are we discussing one?
And we are very happy to have received a lot of trust from companies that are much older and bigger than us.
At the beginning,
they were a bit skeptical about our approach, but now we see how they are adopting it, and that's encouraging. Under the company,
you are quite optimistic when you see other companies like in Germany, France and Great Britain. Do you think they'll support your initiative in this direction? Let's hope the Ukrainians are here to save us, my friends. If we're good enough, they might help us avoid war. Thank you. It was a pleasure and truly interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. This was unique, as we're the first to see it. See you soon.